Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome back. So we are doing this take-home thing. We're gonna start doing this every Wednesday because I know as things get worse with COVID, some people are just gonna have to stay home on any given Wednesday. And we really honestly feel like this is maybe the best way that discipleship actually happens. So even though we really want to be there with your students, discipling your students, discipleship in the home is the primary place where we grow with Jesus. And so we think this is actually a sweet opportunity for us to take advantage of that. So we're glad you guys are here doing this with us. So just to catch everyone up to speed, what we've been doing this semester is walking through the story of the entire Old Testament. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of recap where we've been and then shed some light on where we're going. So creation begins, that's where the Bible begins, is in creation. Genesis, and God creates this good world and he fills it full of life and full of order, and then he plants humans in the Garden of Eden, and he tells them, you're gonna rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and you're going to be my image. You're going to bear it to the world. So you are going to show the world who I am by the way that you rule. But of course, we know that very quickly, the humans don't have faith that God is an all good God. There's this sin that creeps in and it says, hey, maybe God's holding out on you. Maybe it's actually better if you take this for your own advantage, start doing things your own way. So they have a lack of faith in God, and it creates separation between humans and God. So then the question is, what is God going to do? He set humans as rulers, as authorities over the world. Is he just going to relinquish that and start over, or what's he going to do? And we see that God stays true to what he says, and he's like, I've given you this time to be authorities on the earth, to bear witness to me. You've messed that up, but I'm going to allow you to continue to do that. There are going to be consequences. Separation from me, death enters into the world, and we see a whole lot more consequences. Humans are no longer treating people with equity, with love, and they're holding out on each other now. And so how is God going to fix this? And so he comes along and he says, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a family. And he starts with this man named Abraham, and he says, I'm going to create a family of people that have faith in me, and I'm going to establish it beginning with you, Abraham, and your family. It's going to be a blessing to all the nations, and you're going to bear my witness. By this family is going to now be the ones who show people, not just creation, what it looks like when you love God and when you love others. But unfortunately, there's a lack of faith in God by Abraham's family. A famine comes through the land, and they begin to mistrust God. They're like, hey, God gave us this land to live in. He's given us this great family, but I don't know if he can provide in the midst of a famine. So they go down to Egypt, and they ask Egypt to be the ones who provide for them. And God uses that, and he does. He provides for the Israelite people, but their lack of faith comes at a cost, and it ends up leading them to being slaves in Egypt. So then the question is, what's God going to do now? We're slaves in Egypt. How's God going to deliver us from this? And so then in comes Moses, right? And Moses brings about God's deliverance from the evil ones that are oppressing them in Egypt, and he leads them out by the power of God out of Egypt and lands them at Mount Sinai, where now they get to see God and they get to be reunited with him. But God says, all right, you're going to be delivered out of Egypt, and you're going to go take this land that I've been giving you, this promised land. There's going to be some consequences because of the lack of faith earlier. You're going to have to fight some battles now. but I'm with you, so let's go do it. But there's a lack of faith in God again, and the people say, they're too big, they're too scary, we can't do it. There's no possible way we could go in and take this land. And so God says, all right, well then, if you can't do it, if you don't have faith in me, then you'll spend your time wandering around in the desert. But then eventually they have faith in God, they take the land, and they are living in Israel, finally, back where they're supposed to be after all this time. And God raises up a king, and he raises up David, and he's like, okay, finally, we're going back to what I said with Abraham. You're going to be this, not just this family now, but you're going to be this kingdom that proclaims what it's like when we live under God's rule and reign. We're going to love others. We're going to bless others. And David is the first king that steps up to be that person. But him and his sons end up showing a lack of faith in God too. And they turn from God's ways. They turn from being a blessing to the nation. They become all about themselves, and it leads to a division of the country. It's divided into two separate pieces of a country, and then eventually enemy forces come sweeping in, and they take over Israel. And now Israel finds themselves living as exiles in Babylon. So Israel is living in their home, but they're in exile, and they're wondering, God, where are all these promises that you told us? You told us that you're going to live with us with Adam. You told us that you're going to make us a great family. You told us you're going to deliver us from evil, that we're going to be a kingdom of light to the nations. But here we are in exile. How are you going to fulfill those promises? And that's when Jesus steps in. Jesus is the one remaining faithful one who doesn't lack faith in God. And of course, it's because he is God, right? But God comes and he puts himself in the place and fulfills all those promises that he had promised through Jesus himself. He restores what was wrong with Adam's lack of faith. He brings man back in relationship with God, and he does it in a way that's even more abundant. In the garden, they were just living alongside God. Now God is living in humans, in their hearts, in their spirits, in their souls. And then he redeems the family back to him, except he does it in a way that's even greater than Abraham's family, because Abraham's family, it tended to be exclusive, it tended to be just the Jews, but Jesus said, no, anyone who has faith in me is part of my family. And then he delivers from evil, just like Moses had done, had led them out of slavery. Jesus delivers every human who puts faith in him out of ultimate slavery to sin and to evil. So he does what Moses does, but on a cosmic scale. And then he is set up reigning as king over sin, over death, over evil, over all people. It says that every tongue in every nation will confess that he is Lord. So just like David set up this kingdom of light to his people, Jesus set up a kingdom of light to the entire world. And then, just as there was this creation of goodness at the very beginning, Jesus promises, I'm going to come back and recreate things all new. I'm going to make all things new, but it's going to be in a more beautiful way, a more abundant way than it was even at the beginning in Genesis, because now it's God fully indwelling in his creation. So we see this line, this story of God's promises, and they're being tasted, they're being almost kind of seen to be coming true in the person of Adam and Abraham and Moses and David and Jeremiah. But Jesus comes and he fulfills them all, and he blows them all out of the water. He actually absolutely wrecks our expectations of how God was going to fulfill it. But that story of the Old Testament leading up into the New Testament, that's exactly how our lives work too, because God has promised all this goodness for us. He's given us so much, and we take those good things and we make them the main things in God's place. Like for Adam, he was like, I'm supposed to be the ruler, but I want to rule. I want to rule in my own way. Oh, Abraham's like, I'm supposed to have this great family, but I'm going to create this family in my own way. Moses and the people of his time said, oh, we're supposed to be in our own land, but we want to do it our own way. And that's how we live our lives too. We see these things that God said, I'm giving this for your good. And we say, thanks, God, I'm going to do it my own way. And we turn away from a lack of faith because we don't actually believe that God is faithful, and it leads to division, and it leads to all the same problems that it led to for Israel. And that's exactly how my life worked. When I was in high school and college, if you would have looked at me just from the outside in, you probably would have thought, man, that's a person who follows God. He loves God. I did all the right things. Just like Israel, I was checking off all the boxes. I went to church. I led on the worship team. I was doing, all internships and everything. But the reality is it was a facade. I was putting on that face, but really I was making other things the main thing. The thing that I tended to make the main thing in my life was just relationships with women. I would get so invested because for some reason in my heart, I just believed that I wasn't going to be complete until I was in a relationship with a woman who liked me and loved me and was there for me all the time. And so I chased that, and I chased it relentlessly. And so I would dive in deep into relationships, and then when I realized that it wasn't fulfilling what I needed, I would break off that relationship and say, well, maybe it was actually because she wasn't the right one for me. So I would just jump right in to another relationship. And it became this cycle that when I look back on it now, I didn't realize it, but I was absolutely diving into these relationships and then destroying them. And it created that division between me and these people that were my friends. And I wandered aimlessly around just like the Israelites did in desert, from relationship to relationship, looking like, how finally, can I just find someone that's going to fulfill me? And ultimately I found that cycle of jumping from person to person, diving in deep, destroying the relationship, actually destroyed me. It led me to a place where me being fulfilled by what women could give to me was the only thing that I was chasing in my life. And so it ruined my relationships with friends, it ruined my relationship with family, and it ruined my relationship with God. But in that moment, I had a night where I was sitting in my college dorm room, and I knew that I had a decision in front of me. The decision was, do I look at pornography and dive into this again like I had before? Or do I finally humble myself and have faith in Jesus that his way is the right way? And so as I was there, I just cried out to God, and I said, I know that I am ruining this. I'm creating division between you and me, God. I'm ruining relationships. I'm pursuing my own way, and I can't do it anymore. It's going to kill me if I do. And in that moment, Jesus stepped into my life fully. Even though I knew him, I knew who he was in high school. I knew who he was in college. I wasn't in relationship with him. I wasn't allowing him to give me his life. I was refusing to give him everything. But finally, in this moment of brokenness, I said, you know what, I'm willing to give you my relationships and all that too. Jesus, I don't want to pursue it my way anymore. Take it and do with it what you will. And so Jesus stepped into my life and said, thank you, finally. Finally, I'm glad you're here. I'm sorry that you had to give so much hurt and brokenness to lead you to this point. So when Jesus stepped in, he didn't just restore me to how I was in middle school, high school, college, when I knew who God was. He entered into my life and said, I'm going to live with you. I'm going to give you my life. He redeemed me to a new family. He gave me a wife that I love and brought in all of her family. He gave me the church as members of my family, that I have new brothers like David and you guys. That's a new family that he has redeemed me into. He gave me freedom from my sins. I'm no longer trapped in this cycle of chasing after relationship because he's freed me from that to pursue him. He's given me his love, and now I get to give that to other people. Rather than hoarding up love for myself, I get to give out God's love to others. And he gives me a hope that I will ultimately be fulfilled and reunited fully with him when he comes again in his kingdom. In John 10, verses 7, starting in verse 7, if you guys want to turn there. John 10, starting in verse 7. Jesus says this, "Therefore," Jesus said again, "I tell you the truth, I am the gate for the sheep. All who ever came before me were thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. He will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it in abundance. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd who owns the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man who runs away, because he is a hired hand and he cares nothing for the sheep. But I am the good shepherd. I know my Father, and my sheep know me." That's the truth of what I just proclaimed about my life. But Jesus says it this way. He says, hey, you are trying to jump in to heaven in your own way, but you're climbing in. For me, I was just trying to climb into relationship heaven, right? I thought heaven was being in a perfect relationship with the perfect woman who would just fulfill everything I needed, right? But Jesus says, no, if you pursue that, you're like a thief or a robber. You've come to kill and destroy. And that's what happened to me. I destroyed my life, and I destroyed relationship after relationship. I have so many friends that I turned into girlfriends and then just broke the relationship. And I still suffer the consequences because of that, because I love those friends and I miss them, but I destroyed it. But then he says, but I have come that you might have life and have it abundantly. But you have to go through my gate. And what does that mean? That means that we have to trust that Jesus has taken on the weight of our sin. We have to give it to God and give all of it to God, every aspect of our life. I had given other parts of my life to God, I had said, hey, you can have, how I do at school. You can have how I treat these other friends, but you can't have the way that I want to do relationships. I had kept that away from him. But he says, no, I'm the good shepherd, and the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. And so that's what he calls us to as well. He says, lay down your life before me. But I'm not just going to leave it there. I'm going to return abundant life to you. I'm going to restore your relationship with me. I'm going to redeem you to a new family. I'm going to deliver you from sin. And I'm going to be the king over all the earth. So my question for you is, are you following the good shepherd, or are you following a hired hand who, when they see the wolf coming, they abandon the sheep and run away? That's how I had lived my life, following this other promise of safety and security in relationships. And it wasn't until I got to a point of total depravity, total destruction of my life, where nothing else had mattered, that I was able to see the brokenness and my need for a Savior. But praise be to God that he does save. And so if you are heading down that road, please don't allow yourself to go as far as I did. Humble yourself before Jesus and say, I need a new way of doing things because my way is not right. It's not good. I need your way, Jesus. And Jesus steps in that moment and he says, I'm going to save you from that way. And I'm going to give you a life that is abundant. I'm going to give you the church to be your family. And then you have the opportunity, like I am now, to proclaim how good Jesus is to the rest of the world, because he has saved you from that. He has the power. He had the power to save me from what was becoming an addiction and deliver me from that and give me new life, that I can now stand before you and preach the good news. It's incredible. And he's doing the same in your life. So that's what we're going to spend these next few minutes talking about. I want you guys to go through these questions as a family and spend time just discussing it and talking about what is Jesus doing in your life. This is going to be a tough conversation, I'm going to be honest. But if you guys take this seriously and love and grace with each other, I think Jesus is going to do beautiful things. So thanks, guys. We'll see you.